Good morning. I'm Poppy Behrens, publisher of MiniCo Incorporated, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is one of our monthly webinars presented to self-storage owners, operators, managers, investors, developers, and other industry professionals. Today's presentation is Finding Hidden Money in Your Store's Operating Reports by one of my favorite people in the industry, Miss M. Ann Ballard, also known as the Hat Lady. The sponsor of today's webinar is Universal Management Company, based in Smyrna, Georgia, a company that was founded by Ann more than 15 years ago with Norma Taylor. A global industry consultant, Ann has served for more than a decade on state and national self-storage association boards. She has written numerous articles for the Mini Storage Messenger and other publications, including the Self-Storage Almanac, and she has recently released her first book, The Hat Lady Speaks. This year marks the 31st anniversary of the Mini Storage Messenger, which provides the self-storage industry with in-depth news and information about timely topics and the latest industry trends. MiniCo also publishes a variety of other self-storage data sources, such as those that you see listed on your screen. For more information, please visit ministoragemessenger.com. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few webinar details. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on demand from our archives at ministoragemessenger.com, where you can also find information about our upcoming webinars. This presentation should run about 45 minutes, with the remainder of the hour open to questions and answers. As such, we invite you to submit your questions throughout the webinar by typing the question into the question area and clicking Send. While we will try to answer as many submissions as we can at the end of the webinar, those that cannot be answered due to time constraints will be answered by Ann by way of email after the webinar. And now it is my distinct pleasure to turn the presentation over to the Hat Lady of Self-Storage, Miss Ann Ballard. Good morning, Ann.
Thank you, Poppy. Good morning to you, and good afternoon on the East Coast and around the world. We've picked a lively topic for discussion today, finding the hidden money in your store's operating reports. And all of us in this time of recession here in the U.S. really want to do everything we can that's humanly possible to grow our income year over year, instead of just sitting back and letting the recession hit us. So to begin today, I've just given a few little facts that I like to refer to when I'm looking at standards and what I should expect in this economy and what's going on around me. So I pulled some pertinent information from MiniCo's 2010 Almanac, which is the statistical survey in our industry that I get every year. And in the U.S., as you'll notice, our physical occupancy has dropped to about 76%. But more than that, our economic occupancy as an industry here in the U.S. has dropped to 71%. And construction within a 5-mile radius has virtually disappeared. It's down to about 0.2 new stores being developed within a 5-mile radius. So I don't think any of these things are surprising to most of us as U.S. operators we've experienced in the last 12 months. A couple of other shifts have taken place in the industry, however, that would give us some insight when it comes to growing our revenue and especially finding hidden money in our operating reports. We now have, for the first time, less than the normal amount of commercial business as an industry. We are 77% residential, and those people are staying an average of 14.9 months, with only 16.5% commercial, but their length of stay is still 23 months. Students and military are both 2 to 3%, and both of them had drops in their average length of stay. So if we know that those short-term student military customers are not staying as long, and that we have fewer commercial customers than we've ever had before, we see that the commercial customer staying almost twice as long is really the customer we need to go out there and get. But it's a new kind of customer that we're getting now. No longer the tradespeople associated with the home building industry filling up those 10 by 30s. Now we might be filling those climate control 10 by 30s with interior designers and letting them set up a showroom and use our conference room as their office, so to speak, and they're saving on their overhead as business has declined for them, and we're out there trying to get a new kind of commercial customer. A couple of other updates for us. 64% of the people in our industry in the U.S. now use the internet to reach their customers, and customers still want more high-tech amenities such as door alarms, automated lighting systems, so they don't have to turn timers or do anything. They just approach something and it lights up. And consequently, salaries are now higher with a more diverse skill set required now than in years past, and certainly when I started. So having something to compare yourself to is very helpful, and one of the reasons I really appreciate the work that MiniCo does on the Almanac each year. Additional information from the Almanac on this next slide shows us how we've changed as an industry. There are about 50,000 total facilities, and that is about 18 million units with 2.5 billion total net square feet. So here in the U.S. we have a 7.2 square feet per capita absorption, or existing supply, I should say, of self-storage facilities, whereas around the world you would find that number much, much lower. So we are at an all-time high number of square feet per capita, and even in the mixed economy we were just experiencing in the last 18 months and 2 years, the average rental rates for every single size code went up last year. The average 10 by 10 rate is $133.65. So again, this is very helpful when we compare ourselves to others and see what the possibilities are in the industry. Next, I thought before we get into our case study and look at some individual reports, I would just give you a few little updates from our little portfolio. And this first saying by Albert Einstein really does say it all. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So if you never raise rents and you never go out marketing, don't be surprised when you also never get an improvement in income. As a matter of fact, if you're not doing marketing and working your rent structures, you're going to have seen a big decline in your income. And that's one of the things we want to take care of today. You can easily change those things by taking small actions every day. It sounds so easy to do, but many of us, everything we're going to talk about today is pretty much common sense. But we forget to do those little things. So if you make these processes part of your standard monthly set of actions, it really helps to put the money in the bank, so to speak. And remembering that we can know what to do, but if we don't take some action, it's not going to be of any use to us. So remember, you got to take a few actions every single day. So at this point in the year, we're at the halfway point almost exactly. You need to decide, I need to decide, each of us as managers need to decide, are we willing to take these necessary actions every single day for some growth to take place? And overwhelmingly, I hear the answer is yes. Just give me some ideas and let's go for some improvement in our sales growth instead of a decline. So to get into how do we get those dollars of improvement into the bank, here are some averages from our little portfolio last year. Our average store size dropped slightly to 68,000 net rentable square feet. The average unit size dropped to 119 square feet. And the average number of units to 577. So we're seeing smaller units being more typical, and I'm not surprised at that in a recession, to have more units per property with their average size being smaller. But here's some great news for everybody. We were able to achieve a growth in our gross possible income for 2009. So we're up to $1.01 a square foot a month over the 2008 numbers. And here's an example of how we measure growth in each little activity that we take. For 2009, our BSPL, that stands for box sales per lease. Well, it was $31.34 for 09. In 08, $30.54. Well, this year already, by the end, for the month of April, it was $40.33. So if each of us work in small ways to improve each number that we see in our reports, as you can see, by working on it, you can improve it. So I think it was Carol Crandall many years ago that I first heard say, what gets measured gets done. So measuring has an important part to sales improvement. So if you would like to know what your box sales per lease is, just divide all your box and POS sales income by all the leases for the year or the same period, and that'll show you what your average box sales per lease is year to date at your store. Now, additionally, I thought I'd report our delinquent improvements for the year, just again as an example for our portfolio. Here's what we averaged for the year. We sold 1.8 units per store per month. We got $157 a unit as our sales price, which was up about $15 or so, $22. Sorry, not doing that math fast enough. And that's a 22% recovery rate of all the monies that are owed. So one of the things that we would like to improve is to get that recovery rate back to higher than 30%. Well, to do this, we've got to start by getting those letters out as soon as the default occurs, because we collected 78% of all the letters that were mailed. And that's an important thing to know. If you don't mail the letter, whether you have to send it certified, verified, or however your state lien requires, if you don't mail the letter, you're not going to have a chance to get it collected. If you mail a letter, you can always decide not to sell that person, but mailing the letter proves that we'll get about 78% collected prior to the sale date. Surprisingly, my team last year just did a great job, and they ended the year with 5.2% of their gross possible income as their delinquency. This was 0.5% lower than '08, in the worst recession we've seen since the 70s. So it just shows that with a process and a plan and just doing a little bit each day, you can make great improvements even during a recession. Now, let's talk about a little bit about the fees that are assessed by our software packages, as we've programmed them to do, against the fees that managers and all of us might waive. Well, 33% of the fees assessed were waived in 2009, and I am certainly on a goal to get that number down to 20% for 2010. When somebody's waiving a lot of fees, it's proof of a couple of things. First, they don't have the confidence and the training that they need to hold to the policies and procedures that are on the rental agreements and posted in the stores. So maybe some more training is needed if somebody is waiving a lot of fees. Our lowest fees waived as a percentage was 4.2%, and I'd like to see more managers pulling that number off, as it certainly is an improvement. So let's jump right into a couple of things. Here is a look at how you compare yourself to others and know if you're improving or not. Every year I compare our income and expenses to those of the self-storage expense guidebook that MiniCo publishes. This is a wonderful report, and it shows by each region of the country as well as the national average. Since most of our properties are in the southeast, I compare us to the southeastern averages. But I noticed that in the MiniCo expense guidebook, they count only the occupied square feet, whereas in my history over 11 years, I've always counted all of the vacant square feet as well. Well, last year I think we had 13 stores either brand new or still in lease-up, and that's a lot of vacant square footage. So as you can see, in looking at the green bars on the graph, the number of dollars per square foot in income went down. However, when I went back and compared it to the occupied square feet only, our income was $9.92 a square foot and expenses were $4.17. That did, I'm proud to say, outperform the southeastern averages for both income and expense in the guidebook. And I also gave our 2008 numbers as occupied square feet as well, just for reference. But I find that measuring the same number over time lets all of us see how we're doing. So as you can see, there was our report for the last 11 years. I'm always curious to know if other people are measuring their numbers the same way. So what I thought I'd do today is pick an actual live property, of course one here in Atlanta, to see if by using only the reports, all of us as clever operators and managers, if we could find that hidden money and in easy ways for the manager, of course, to achieve. So here's our case study property. It's a 20-year-old stabilized property that has 70,000 square feet of space. It has 660 units, and those are made up of climate units, non-climate units, which are drive-up ones, and parking spaces to rent. They're on a busy road with lots of traffic, and they have about, gosh, I would say about 1,000 feet of frontage on that road. And the original buildings were all drive-up. The newest building is a 3-story all-climate building. The property is gated, fenced, well lighted, has a digital sign now, which is something I would recommend that everybody try to do. It's clean, and we'll get 100% positive comment cards back from the existing customers when they move out. And the office was remodeled and enlarged last year, and I'll talk a little more about that later. But through the end of February this year, they were about $1,400 under on income versus their budget, and about $3,700 over on expenses. So that created a $5,200 variance to the budget. Well, I'm happy to say that now they are exceeding their budgeted income now. But let's go ahead and take a look at these reports so we can get you started. Now, as a matter of fact, I happen to use SiteLink as our operating system, and those are the reports that you'll see today. But I went through a class with some Georgia operators and then also operators in other places recently, and these same processes. And I just wanted to give you a couple of responses from some owners who attended the Georgia class. One of them said, well, my manager is so charged up already and has already begun making changes to increase revenue. The ideas we learned will help us generate thousands of dollars in 2010. Another owner writes, they already found $8,000 in revenue from switching from deposits to admin fees, and they get another great increased revenue when their street prices are raised in June and the existing customer prices raised as well. So we're finding somewhere between, $8,000 and $20,000 in each set of reports that I look at. So first you begin with the management summary. And that management summary is going to give you an overview of that particular store's priorities. And every self-storage property, all 50,000 of them here in the U.S., is absolutely unique. But there are some patterns we can look for. So this management summary is going to point us in the direction we need to take for improving income. So as you can see, on the top right side, I have indicated the occupancy percentages. First, the occupancy percentage of units. This particular property is 82%. Then the occupancy percentage of square footage. This particular property is 83%. But when you come down here to the occupancy percentage of money, or the economic occupancy, they are 84%. So they're actually economically higher occupied than they are physically. And this is a very unique and unusual situation. This means that they've got a lot of older customers with them for a while that are paying higher than today's street rates. So this is a pretty good situation to be in. So the first thing we do is look at the rent income, and that's over here on the left side. And I think we have a blow-up of this, and I'll ask Robin to advance our slide, and I'll show you this in detail. What would we do without Robin? She's so helpful. So at the top you can see, as I've highlighted, those three kinds of occupancy: units, square foot, and economic occupancy. Well, this particular sample we're looking at is a very unique situation. Usually I find that the economic occupancy is much lower than the physical occupancy, as seen in the Almanac study. That was a full 6 points lower. So, just making sure you know where you're starting. If, for example, your square footage occupancy was the larger of all three of those numbers, you'd know that your customers like your big units, they're renting of all the big ones, and they generate the lowest income per square foot. But if units is the highest of the three numbers, that means your customers love those small units, and that typically helps drive up the economic occupancy. So the first thing we'll look at in the next section is rent. Well, as you can see, rent equal or greater than the contract amount. So I've compared this month's rent collection of $61,000 to the actual occupied unit rent of $61,800. So it looks like they're coming in pretty close to what's under contract. Then next, I compared their box sales per lease. Here it shows that they had $3,600 in box sales by the time I printed this report, and I did the math on that, and that's about $50 per lease. That's pretty good. And additionally, as I've marked on the right side, I looked at the late fee income. So late fee income was $6,200. Other fee income was $1,200 to give us, about $7,500 of late fee income. Well, a lot of times, if you only looked at the income side, you would not get the whole story. If you just come a little bit farther down the page in that same column, you'll see under concessions, late fees waived and other fees waived. Well, this manager's doing a great job. They only waived $422 compared to the $7,400 they collected. So that's very low fees waived. That's very good. So this manager was doing a great job. So next we move back to the right side of the page, and let's look at delinquents. Well, I don't think we could ask the manager to do a better job than to be 0.5%, 0.5% delinquent, and that's in the column under percentage of gross possible rent, delinquent, and 0.5%. That's pretty darn fabulous. So I guess we'll be proud of the manager for that. But where I did find some money was in the rent discounts listed under rent variances, and not enough people had had their rent changed in the last 0 to 6 months or 6 to 12 months. So I'll go ahead and we'll get Robin to jump us to the next slide, and we'll talk about getting the easy money first. If I can get Robin to go back one, thank you. This is getting the easy money first. This store has good box sales per lease, or $50.97 year-to-date average. They've not been waiving fees, so that's very good late fee income. $7,400 collected versus $400 waived, so that's a net of $7,000. And they have very low delinquents at month end, so they haven't left a lot of money on the street because they're not collecting their delinquents. And they also have very strong insurance sales. 83% of their move-ins this year had purchased the insurance program offered. So you need to look at those numbers first, because those are the easy money categories, and see what your own numbers are. You might be very surprised when it just means you've got to make sure that each person signs up for insurance, or that we sell boxes and promote that on our website and on our digital sign. All right. Next, if I've clicked the correct button, next we'll continue with this discussion of getting the easy money first by reminding ourselves that we have to manage our rental rate structures, and we have to do that by their size codes. A size code is like a 5x5, a 5x10, a 10x10, a 10x15. And then also all those same sizes in climate control. That makes another group of size codes. So each one is managed individually, not as a group. So in the middle of each month, we take some rate management actions. And the two types of rate structures that we're working are the street or standard rates, and then the contractor customer rates. So I'm going to go ahead and jump you to the next screen, because I'm going to show you exactly how this works. Robin, if you would take us to the next screen. Okay, managing the two rental rate structures means that the street rate is only paid by new folks coming in. The contractor tenant rate is paid by the existing customers, and those two systems do not cross. They are separate and managed separately, and it's really not rocket scientists like our young man pictured in this photo. All the software packages in the industry that I know of can do it for you. But the best yield comes from a manager who knows how to do it themselves. I think the human mind is actually smarter than the computer in this case, because with a few standards or benchmarks, the manager can get to it probably before the computer can. So our next slide shows us the report that we're going to use to manage the street rates. And this report, and let me see if I can't get us to the next screen. Yeah, this one in SiteLink is called Rental Activity. And the reason we use this report is because it shows us several things. It groups the size codes together, like here we have climate control, and then next we have the street level climate control, which are more expensive. And then at the bottom of the report, we have the drive-up units. And in addition to that, it shows us what the rate is for each of those units, how many of the units we have in total, what's rented, what's vacant, and I've circled the ones that have any meaningful vacancy left to sell this year. And then most importantly, this column I've circled on the right, the rented percentage. So if you would go down through this report, as I've done, I highlighted every size code that was 90% or higher occupied, or only had 3 or less of that unit size available to rent. That means that that size is full, and you need to address the street rates on that size. So I put in the new rates written in under new dollars in that column so that you could see what I might be changing that new rate to. Well, this helps us create the perceived discount. So as managers, you know, if we have too much of something available, we might think, well, we need to discount that size. We've got too many of them. But that really hurts our ability to earn income and pay the mortgage. So the better thing is to raise the prices on the ones around it that are full, and that creates a perceived discount. You'll see that here in this top group with the 5 by 15, 10 by 10, and 10 by 11. The 5 by 15 has been raised up to $120 a month. The 10 by 10 left at $128, and the 11 by 11 raised up to $175. So if you're like most of us, you quote the next smallest and largest sizes to your customers. The 128 is now a bargain compared to the 120 for a 5 by 15, the smaller size, and it's a lot cheaper than the next size up, the 11 by 11, which the difference is what, almost $50 there. So that can help you fill up sizes that you have vacant available. So let's just recap how the street rates are handled. We'll go back one slide, Robin, please. In looking at the same report, thank you so much, find all the 90% occupied size codes and raise those street rates. And then I showed the new rental rates written in that column. The circled ones are the most vacant and the ones that need to be marketed. And we kind of keep these worksheets until we get to the next month or so just to see what our progress is. Sometimes in a slow market you may have to come back on the price just a tiny bit, and you'd want to be able to go back to where you were before instead of slashing and burning if you had to. So let's look at what that means in dollars to this property. And thank you, Robin. So on this particular property, when I did the math, how much better will your income be if you take time each month to review rates and demand, especially that size that's always full? This is the marketplace speaking clearly to your offering, even taking your competition and their rates into consideration. For example, right now, if you look up where it says the type is parking and the standard rate used to be 78 and I raised it to 85, well, that's because all 31 of the spaces we have are rented, and they have been rented for quite some time. So maybe your property has wider driveways or better lighting or better access hours, or maybe you have some exclusive you offer that the competition doesn't. So if the market is keeping that size full all the time, you really need to consider raising the rent on that one. Now, in our next slide, that means to us at this particular property that we got another $391 a month on the currently vacant spaces, or we grew the gross possible by $389 a month. That's $4,668 a year. Now, that's a sizable amount of money. You can buy new keypads with that, get new flat panel screens for your monitors, and you could do all kinds of things with an additional approximately $5,000 a year. When we increase these street rates, it doesn't affect our current customers. So again, find the 90% occupied, those with less than 3 available, and create some perceived discounts. In any condition, don't wait until you've got only one of a size left to increase the prices. Empower your managers to get what they think they can get that's higher when they're down to the last one of a type. So on our next slide, contract or tenant rates. So each of you has to make a decision on what numbers you're going to fill these blanks in with. I'll tell you what ours are and our reason behind it, and then you can decide for yourself what's going to work for you. We find everyone that has 210 days or more of no rate increase. In no condition should you go more than 330 days, because that's once a year, because you have to give a 30-day notice. So we're looking for everybody 210 days or more with no rate increase. We raise the rent in small increments, like $1 to $3 on the small sizes, 3 to 7 on the 10 by sizes, and maybe 8 to 20 or more on the larger sizes. So by the time you work these files, give the 30-day notice, it would be 270 days for us, or every 9 months, that each person gets a small increase. And really, when you look at the time value of money, it's better to get a smaller amount more frequently and easier for managers than to try to get larger amounts only once a year. This store has 135 that need raising, and if the average is about $5 for each one of those, that's another $675 a month, or $8,100 per year more income. That means that already we found about $12,000 on this property. So let's just take a look at how this worksheet goes within SiteLink. We use, and I'm sorry I did not call out the name of this report here, but it's called the Occupied Units Report, and we sort it by the number of days the rental rate has been the same. And I highlighted that column out to the far right. So, of course, if the owner's units or the company units, I exempt those, but everybody else at 210 days, we're going to go in and send the program a message to raise their rent and tell the program what the new effective date is. So once you do the process, in our software at least, you will see the scheduled rate and the scheduled date, and it shows up right there in the report, so you see how much and when it's going to take effect. So you need to ask yourself, what's your policy for those paying higher than today's street rates, or the ones that show a negative variance? And the top grid of the page, you can see there's a couple of -13, -9. Those people are currently paying more than today's street rate, but we continue to raise them anyway. We have found that it doesn't make any difference, and the customers all pay different rates, just like you pay at hotels and airlines. It's all based on today's demand, and we've not had any problems with that. All right, let's jump to the next slide. Robin, if you would. Thank you. This is just the contract rate worksheet shown a little bit closer up. Give the rent increase at move-in if you'd like to. Have a couple of managers that hand the rent increase letter to the customer when they move them in, and that encourages them to prepay. So you can do all sorts of things, but in no less than once a year for everyone. So let's talk about, thank you, Robin, on to the next one. Let's talk about what happens when that customer gets that rate increase letter, and now what do you do? So when the customer calls us, we always let their history with us prevail. And we use a technique called if I could, would you? And I'm going to show you that on the next slide. So everything about your decision making should be based on your customer's history. So remember to reward excellence, not mediocrity. And by that we mean we might delay a rent increase for an exceptionally good customer that's been there 5 years or more, you know, and all their phone numbers work, and they're a great customer in every way. Whereas if it's someone who is always late and drives the manager crazy and is a bother and a nuisance, we might not waive it for them quite so much. So here's what we would recommend that you do. If they call saying they can't believe you raised their rent, try saying to them, well, let me check your account. This is checking the customer history. And if they're a long-term customer with that perfect record, you might say something like, well, Mr. Jones, since you're a Gold Star customer, if I could delay your rate increase for a few months, would that make you happy? And typically, yes, that works and works easily because you've acknowledged that you have a good, loyal, long-term customer. Or you might ask, well, what amount do you think is fair? And you'd be surprised by how honest and forthright most people are in their answer. So just remember, it's easier to do more frequent small amounts than to leave them for years untouched and then go in and try to get increases. Inflation is coming to us all, and we need to have a standard process for dealing with this even in today's economy. So remember, be consistent. Everyone gets one per year at minimum. Next, I'm going to talk about another way to improve our income, and this is by using prepaid rent to keep you on budget. Because as managers and operators of storage facilities, our job is to hit those budgeted income numbers however we can find the ways to do that. We can sell more boxes, we can collect more late fees, we can sell more insurance, we can do a lot of things to help improve the income. But remembering, when it comes to rent, you get three kinds of rent. You get current rent, past due, and prepaid. So on the, this is the site inspection report I'm looking at in SiteLink right now. It gives us 4 months at a glance for all these numbers. You can see under the payment receipts for just rent how that number kind of varies a little bit each month. And when you come to the middle of the page and look at prepaid rent for each of those months, you'll see that the numbers are all over the place. Left to right, they go from 17,000 down to 10,000 to 12,000 and then 18,000 in December. Well, if we could even that number out, and the bottom grid shows you what percentage that equals, as you'll see it goes from 23% to 14 to 16 to 24. Well, if that number was 22 or 21% every month by us getting on the phone and taking some actions, then our income would be more evenly spread, not all these peaks and valleys just based on how it automatically comes in the door based on the calendar. All right, we'll jump to the next slide, and I'll show you how to use the 3, 6, and 12 prepaid discounts. I think it's pretty standard for all of us to have used the 6 and 12-month prepay programs for many, many years. But now we're using the 3-month prepay to even out the income. So you might need to call 10 to 30 customers a month and offer that 3-month prepay and give them 5% off. Which credit card do you want to use, Ms. Jones? Until you hit your budgeted income number for the month. Now, this can become a rolling count, and each month you call maybe 10 to 30 customers to make sure you hit your income goals. Well, you can't wait till the last day of the month to do this. We recommend doing a reality check on the 10th and 20th so you kind of see how it's coming in and what actions you need to take. Because if you wait till the last 2 days of the month, you're just not going to have time. So by checking the 10th and 20th, where am I compared to last month and where am I compared to my goal, then that helps us kind of manage the prepay process. This month I might only have to call 5 customers. Next month I might have to call 25. But my hitting that income target is my job as the manager. Okay, next, this is the prepaid rent report. And let me see if I can't get that slide to move forward. Maybe I'll ask Ms. Robin to help me. For those of you who don't know, Ms. Robin is behind the scenes at MiniCo, and she's a wonderful organizer, and we appreciate her work. So here is a prepaid rent report, and it shows us how much of the prepaid rent is assigned to each future month. In most stores I look at, the prepaid rent, most of it runs out by the next month, and then it becomes a decreasingly smaller number to a nominal number within the next 8 to 12 months. So as you can see, if you could work that prepaid and spread it out more, you can have your income target each month and still not have so much prepaid rent that you can't get future rent. So especially a store in lease-up, a brand new store that's just open and has lots of vacancies. You know, vacancy loss dollars are the dollars you cannot ever get back. So if you could get every new customer in a lease-up store to prepay 3, 6, or 12, that greatly assists the owner-developer in cash flow, because a new store opens with 0 income, and they would sure appreciate it. And by the way, I've had several stores doing this process for a couple of years now, and it has worked very well. All right, on to the next slide. Here is a close-up of that site inspection report. And so not only for rent, late fees, boxes, and prepaid rent can you set some goals, but you need to set a goal in a specific way, a separate target each month for all of those numbers. So, you know, we see that we average about oh my goodness, at this particular store our box sales are all over the place, up and down. So the average of that over the 4-month period for merchandise is probably close to $900 or $1,000. So let's set a target of $1,000 in box merchandise sales every month, and that gives the team something to work towards. On our next slide, here's another easy place to find money, and I'm amazed at how much money I find off this report. As managers, when we're working our auction files, the normal thing for us to do is to use the past due report because it typically gives us the phone numbers and things we need to work the past dues. But you really might want to go in and use this unpaid charges report to audit your auction processing and find those unusual anomalies that sometimes we don't see in the other reports. So this report just tells me everybody who owes me money and I printed this one on the last day of March, and I want to make sure nobody is in my 60, 90 day or beyond columns. So if you'll look at the 61 through 90 and the other columns past that, there is no money in there except that crazy $21 for our customer in Unit 297. Well, as you can see, that customer doesn't owe us any current rent. They owe us $8 of 11 to 30 day rent, $50 of 3160, and $21 of 6190 day. So we've got something going on in that unit with a little investigation. We could probably make that all go away with a simple phone call. What credit card do you want to use? I'd really like to get you off my books for auction processing. And then we find the other 3 customers who are now in the auction process, the ones that I've highlighted above. So just make sure you don't have any miscellaneous small amounts of money out there by looking at this report approaching the end of the month and for sure the last day of the month. Okay, our next slide talks about how we're going to measure expenses. And there really are 2 ways to measure them. And I've shown you both of these in my example of just one category of our budget. This is the cost of management. Measure both per square foot and as their percentage it takes of actual income. And you can see that you need to measure both ways to see the whole story. For example, this one shows that for the percentage of actual income, that's about 21% over the last 11 years. But the dollars per square foot, based as how incomes have come up and down and all sorts of things in that same time period, go in quite a different pattern, as you can see by the green bars above. So we just recommend measuring things both ways, as the percentage of actual income and the cost per square foot. And in the cost per square foot, by the way, we include all square footage on the property, whether vacant or occupied. So the next 2 slides are just quick examples, and you can hopefully, I think, download or get these later so that you might go back and compare each of the categories. So that I'm measuring this one as the dollars per square foot, and as you'll see on the next one, as the percentage of income. Now, looking at the next one, percentage of income, it's going to show us, if you look just at advertising, that over the 11-year history, we were constantly driving that number down since or the year 2000 in particular, when it was at 6.3%, and then it went up, and then we started really working on getting that number to go down after 2002. And in 2008, we got that number down to 3.71% of income. Well, last year in 2009, that number went up for us to about 4.29% of actual income, as it did for many of the large operators. So you'll see that large operators are throwing more into advertising and marketing expenses as the economy went sideways on us, or downwards. In our next slide, here's another way that prevents us from waiving fees and making sure we stick to the rules. This is called, for us, we call this the Vanna White sign because we point it out just like the lady on the game show. And it's really our one set of rules for everybody. So it's customized by logo and company, and in the picture on the bottom right, you'll see that's our standard accent wall. 2 large screens stacked on the left, a 3-dimensional logo in the middle, and then the logo on a Vanna White sign on the right. So that's what every customer sees when they walk into the door and look right past the desk. And it just points out what the late fees are, and we try to be as positive as possible in calling out these things. But, you know, it really does help to have that posted, because then everybody knows that that sign has been there the whole time. That's what the deal is. Here's what the fees are. And they can't say, well, nobody told me. And for a delinquent and auction tip, why not try at move-in, showing them your auction calendar for the year and saying to them, we have an auction every month, you know, for those people who don't pay. And would you like to be on the auction mailing list too? And that convinces them that if they don't pay, their stuff is going to be sold without you having to make those thousands of phone calls that it takes to track down delinquent money. You can also keep your current legal ad on display there, which prompts them that they don't want to see their name posted there, you know, saying that there will be a sale or a foreclosure sale. You can also mail them a copy of the legal ad highlighting their name or unit number in a birthday envelope with no return address. A colorful birthday envelope, everybody's going to open that, and we got this trick from Tom Litton many years ago, and it works great, so I encourage all of you to try it as well. Next, to train customers to pay on time, you got to decide. Either they're going to train you for them to pay late, or you're going to train them to pay on time. So once you decide what's going to happen, then you can go forward. And the acceptable amount of delinquent dollars for us is a percentage of the gross possible, measured on the last day of the month, and it should be somewhere between 3 and 5%. And we do get to make calls 7 days a week since our stores are open 7 days a week. But each store is unique. You know, you might have a store on the, you know, south side of town that maybe is older, no bells and whistles, and they really don't have a good residential population base. Well, they're going to collect a lot more late fees and have a higher delinquency than that brand new store on the very desired part of town in a great location. So remember this, customers always have 2 to 3 times more money than they say they do. Do not take partial payments. It really just creates a prolonging of the pain and the agony, because once the customer has mentally let go of their goods, when the money owed is worth more than their emotional attachment, it's going to go to sale. It always does. So try using only one set of rules, and I think you'll see an improvement to fee incomes there, and you'll have a cleaner set of delinquent reports. Now, here's what we're really after, is we want more RRM. That's repeats, referrals, and marketing source customers. These are the kinds of customers that cost the least, and they are the easiest to get, but you got to get out there and get them by your marketing efforts and encouraging your customers with your great customer service. So there's some things to think about. How do you classify your current customers renting additional units? How do you classify your repeat customers? And are you tracking your referrals? So you really want more than 30% of each month's business to come from repeat, referral, and marketing. And then as we move on to other ways we're tracking expenses and income to improve things, as I mentioned earlier, on the cost per lease, marketing expenses are going up. It's going to continue. 75% of people in the U.S. are discounting, with the dollar first month being the most popular. Discounts ranging from 20% and up. Our cost per lease for our portfolio last year was $61. That's the average for all the leases divided by all of the marketing and advertising costs. But if you look at only Yellow Pages, last year we only got 4% of our business from Yellow Pages, and those leases cost $1,162. I mean, that was just too much. So most of us are doing away with Yellow Pages and moving to web-based pay-per-click, which is PPC, SEM, which is search engine marketing, and SEO, which is search engine optimization. Those can bring us a lot more customers at a lot lower cost. This is a copy of the marketing summary from our case study store, and you can see I quickly identified those people who'd been with us more than a year, and there's about 250 people in that little red box that are the Gold Star customers because they've been with us longer than average, and I bet when you look at their records, you know, they have pretty good history with us as well. You might want to do some marketing just for them. Give them something you don't offer anybody else. But do force these questions at move-in so you know what is working and what kind of customer you're generating. For example, this particular store, under that third column from the left, under customer type, they've got 22.9% commercial customers. And to the column to the right of that, they're getting most of those in service-based businesses, distribution businesses, and retailers. And I find that to be common across the board in every location. So retail, distribution, and service-based businesses are kind of the ones you want to go after. There's some additional measurement on this report as well, but time won't really allow us to go through all of that today. I'm just going to show you some highlights on these additional reports and get you to think about your own targets. This is the second page of the marketing summary report, and it shows us that this store gets 51% of their traffic from drive-by, 43% of the traffic from repeat, referral, and marketing, and 5% from the internet, and 0 from Yellow Pages. So this particular location has a much lower cost per lease than that $61 I quoted for our company last year. Next, we'll see that once you kind of have measured and you know who your customer is and what's worked, you can fine-tune that. We just have been tracking these particular numbers for many years, and we see that for 2009, our highest percentage ever of residential customers, we have about the same 60% of male customers. We know women do the research and the men have to come in and sign the leases. We know that it's still the same, about 75% that are 5 miles or less, but we are seeing the customers' average age get older. So with an aging population of baby boomers, I'm not surprised to see some of that since they're more affluent and have more disposable income. But we will go ahead and take a look at knowing what has worked, and on our next slide, using our referrals to really generate more business. So if you're tracking and measuring at move-in all of the activities that you take, and you're getting rid of those expenses, maybe like Yellow Pages, that has not worked for you, then you can focus and become passionate about getting referrals. And we really do treat them like gold, and we pay the referral fee to anyone. So the old days, it was done mostly as a rent credit, but I've kind of seen that disappear over recent years. And it's much more transportable to offer anybody who sends you a customer. Once they move in and you process their payments, then we process the check request and get a check and take it down there and say thank you. So if you can improve your repeat, referral, and marketing to 30% of your business each month, and improve your closing ratios by not wasting the calls and walk-ins that you get, it's also important to make sure the whole team is counting traffic the same way, that they're measuring daily at the close of day screen or on some kind of traffic form the calls, walk-ins, and leases, and web inquiries too, for that day. And if you do all those things, I think you'll see an almost immediate improvement to the business. This next chart just shows our traffic sources. Like I said, I've been tracking this number for a long time. So you've got 10 years right here you're seeing. And as you can see, Yellow Pages dropped to 4% last year, the lowest number, and I'm not surprised. It'll probably go down again this year. Internet is growing. We're thrilled about that because it's much cheaper to do business. But you do want to keep that repeat referral marketing very strong. And we did see a big bump to drive-by last year, which I was glad to see. I think that has a lot to do with better signage out there, digital signage that makes them stop and look, and better looking new buildings that we opened last year. So now we'll jump to the next slide, and it shows us The average length of stay in days, whether you're looking at the Almanac reports or our own portfolio, we are seeing that average length of stay go back down. But for my group, we're still at approximately 3 years average length of stay because we've got some a bunch of older locations with some very happy customers who are staying put, and we're glad about that. But notice if you get any shifts to average length of stay, because that could indicate something's going on in your marketplace. Now, in the box sales category, you need to balance the box inventory physically every month and make sure all your costs for those goods are in your system. So we recommend marking up your costs by 2.125 times. That'll give you 55% of the sales price as profit. And if you'll inventory balance in the middle of the month and make sure you order in a timely way, then you won't have as many unusual losses, theft, or some expenses you have in immediate ordering and paying freight. When a caller is on the phone with you and you're chatting about the other wonderful attributes of your store, make sure you mention, "Don't pack until you see me. We've got a great box showroom." And then you might offer, as we point out in these signs and in this left-hand yellow block, maybe bundle pricing. People who order over $199 get free delivery within 10 miles, or a buyback program if they return them unused and clean with the original receipt. And you'll find that very few people come back in and have you buy back their boxes, but it gives them peace of mind. So we use this merchandise summary report, and it helps us balance the inventory and make sure we got our markup. And as we said, we sold $40.33 worth of boxes to every single move-in in the company in April. Well, $22.18 of that was profit from each move-in. So if you could add approximately $25 of profit to every move-in, wouldn't you do it? Well, yes, that's a great way to improve income. Now, here we're looking at another important aspect. We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but that's our call conversion rates and our walk-in conversion rates. We saw something extraordinary take place in the last 18 months. For the first time ever, we saw customers calling more than once and coming in more than once because they're all afraid. They need comforting and to be able to trust you. So we've got to convert the traffic that walks in the door. As you can see from the spikes in our closing ratios in the 09 graph, we really went after that and improved those closing ratios. So for every 100 callers, we had 139 walk-ins, or 139%, and for every walk-in, we converted 83.9% of those, or 116 out of the 139 that walked in the door. So just have some process in your group where everybody's on the same page, measuring the same way. And we used, I think it's one of our next, well, it's coming up shortly, it's a little program that we use to give them more comfort in our skills. I'll show you that here in just a few minutes. But not converting your traffic gets very expensive. Now, just a brief comment as we are nearing our closing time, but you know, when you're marketing for increased demand, you've got to be doing things on the ground, physical things like holding more community events, doing more socializing with other companies and groups, more than just social media alone. So remember, our common goal is to get more door turns, as we call them, more people visiting our site, seeing how wonderful it is, all the special things we have to offer. That's why we host special events on the site. And we form a lot of strategic partnerships with local businesses and charities. So we do encourage all of you to get out there. You need to meet, greet, network. You need to email, join in, participate in memberships you already have, create new programs and services, call your customers and prospects, mail, and have a social media presence, which might be Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Meetup. Meetup is a great one for setting up your own networking clubs because you can use meetup.com to share the upcoming notices of minutes or who's going to be speaking. So try to gather fans if you're on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube and get those people to become part of your marketing army. And after you make the decision to participate and to be part of all of those activities, you really do need to plan your marketing and then work that plan. So we do it a year at a glance and get a score each month, and these are some examples in these photos. And that plan looks just like this. It's a spreadsheet. Let's get that next slide to come up. It's a spreadsheet where the manager sets the goals for each month for how many outgoing phone calls, outgoing emails, letters or postcards, maybe third-party mailings, on-site visits to other businesses, and other might include club meetings, chamber meetings, or luncheons and things like that. So then we measure at the end of the month what we actually achieved. And it really does help us stay on tune. We're averaging, I think, close to 1,300 per store per month right now, and I really would like to see that number at about 2,000. But here is an example. We certainly have no time to go through all 53 of the items I've listed, but you got to find out what makes you special in your marketplace. It could be your extraordinary customer service, and 95% of your customers are referrals. So whatever your special story is, tell your whole story and say it with pictures, because photographs are really the proof of what you claim. It's just not type and text in an ad. It's an actual photograph. And use those photographs everywhere. And here's an example of how we do that. We do here a menu of services at our stores that have business centers and conference rooms. That might be something that you could do. We use the logo in the background on that one. And next, we do our annual comparable survey book, which puts us out in the marketplace once a year, photographing the competitors and getting their pictures and of what they look like from the street, what does their storefront look like or sign, and then the materials they give to any other prospect. And we put this book together. So when someone says to us, well, I can get the same 10 by 10 down the street for $50 less, you could just say to them, well, you know what? Here's a picture of that store. If you notice, you know, we share referrals with them too, but their driveways are only 15 feet wide, and you're not going to be able to get your truck down their driveway. So it really doesn't matter what the price is if you can't use it. So we let that picture tell the story, and it keeps us all from being trapped in a price-only selling model. And really, that's the way to go. So in conjunction with that, this is what we started using the last year or so. And these are handouts that we make wall charts of a grid of all those other stores in the market and then ourselves. And we show all the things that we have and that they don't have all those things. And then we show pictures of the store as well. And let me show you one more of those. This is the next one is from the store in New Orleans. You can see they have a huge list of all the things they have and then pictures of all their unique attributes. So when somebody says, I want to go shop prices, you could just hand this to them and say, well, you know, that's part of my being a professional storage counselor is I know all my competitors, update my prices every month, and I visit them, you know, all the time, and here's the proof. And that gives the customer a lot of confidence in you and your skills when you can prove that you know what's going on in your marketplace. So this next slide just recaps what we have to do annually to know what the competitor has to offer and how we compare to that. Let me see if I can't get that to click forward, or maybe ask Miss Robin to rescue me as she is doing.
It's clicking forward. We just have a little bit of a drag time, so.
Sorry about that. Here's another one. This is the store down in Amelia Island, Florida. They're famous at Fernandina Beach for that lighthouse, and they have a huge military population. Well, she has said it's not just a rating, it's an honor to be 5 stars, and then use stars as her comparison with the picture of the lighthouse in the background. And Kim, our great manager down there, does a great job of community networking and holding great on-site events, some of which she has in her pictures here. So this is really the proof you're the best value, and then the decision to become a customer with you is very easy. So in addition to that, making sure you know how to sell once you've got them on site. We agree you should stand and greet them. You should prepare in advance. Use 2-by-2 selling, which means that you're going to offer this or this. today or tomorrow. And then ask these 4 questions, with the number 1 being the most important. Have you ever rented self-storage before? Because still we find in a lot of markets 50% of customers renting today have never rented before. Well, that tells you you need to handle them with kid gloves. And then that last question, how long do you think you'll need it? Well, we use that to limit discounts. And let's jump in and I'll show you how that's done. When we've asked question number 4, how long do you think you'll need it? And most customers at the beginning say, oh, a month or 2 months. Then, if they're saying, well, I can still get this down the street, the same unit, they have all the same things as you for $20 a month cheaper, then you might say to them, well, if I could give this to you for the same price for those 2 months that you said you'd need it, then after that, if you stayed, it would go to its regular price. Would you rent with me today? You will find very often you are signing those people up. Or make sure you just come right out and ask them, what's it going to take for you to be my customer today? People love to be asked for their business. And listen to your customer and what they're telling you that they want. And that will really help you during the presentation. Now, as we move to this next slide, let me see if I can get that button to click. When you're limiting your exposure to discounts, just make sure if you're doing a discount at all that it is something meaningful. And here we see knowing who you want to sell to. This is just a complete list of the categories of people that we're out there talking and telling and showing our property to, so that they can also be sources of referrals for all of us. And you can find all of these online, by the way. Perhaps, as we're going to see here on this next slide, you're just needing to market a few sizes. We'll only go after those groups of people who use that particular size or who can refer users of that size. And then on this next one, when you're out there to sell off-site, just make sure you're taking some of these actions every day. Making calls, sending emails, mailing postcards or letters, and spending at least 8 hours a month making personal visits to local businesses. Then once you come back from that visit, put all that contact information into your Outlook or other database, and then you could be email marketing them after that. So use those valuable hours you spend out on the street telling your story and inviting people to come and take a tour of the property by valuing those contacts you get and putting them in the database. Now here are some snapshots of on-site events that generate great door turns. So we've had a lot of success this past year with our yard sale program, generating an average of over 1,000 people per yard sale. It costs very little and we get lots of rentals out of it. So you might do anything from a customer appreciation day or week to a drive-through haunted house. But make sure you register the guest, follow up with them after that, getting their contact information, and give them some kind of little goodie bag to go home with. Don't put all the food and drink in the office. Make sure you spread that out through the units, and give door prizes because everybody likes a chance to win something, and that's the reason they register and give us all their data. Now, property upgrades are our last question for improving income. First, ask yourself, are you delivering clean, dry, and secure units? Because every 10 years, most properties need a facelift. And it could be any one of all of this list of items that I've included here, or perhaps on the next page. Maybe your broken keypads that are dangling off of that post that has nothing to protect it. Maybe just a new post with some bollards to protect it and a new keypad would make customers feel like you're taking care of them. Maybe you just need to paint or clean. But here are just some goals and things for you to consider. But a digital camera going out into the marketplace and across the street from your property and from the left and from the right, shooting pictures of your property, and then just sit down and look at those photographs. Is your landscaping overgrown? Can they not see your sign anymore? Are the lights out in the sign? We have an obligation to keep all of that really going forward in order to be able to improve income. And then as we move into our close today, here are some photos of some property upgrades. So just a few of those can make a dramatic improvement. And then here are some other areas you might target for improvement. Not only the rental rates and the box and merchandise sales, but insurance sales, maybe conference room and meeting services. Here are pictures of 3 of my conference rooms. Maybe you need to add a truck rental dealership in there. Or maybe you just need to start converting the traffic that you have instead of just letting them walk out the door saying that they're going to go look somewhere else. And so in addition to those physical improvements that a property has to make to keep growing its income, let me see if I can get this next slide to show up. Don't forget your attitude. Robin, can we just dash back to that last slide before that? Yeah. Don't forget your attitude. You can't have doubts, you just have to do. So get rid of the stinking thinking, because no one likes to work with a sourpuss. And it's absolutely true. So you need to be motivated, sparkling, and dynamic when we're dealing with our customers and prospective customers. So hopefully in this brief amount of time today, even though we're over just a few minutes, you'll have seen at least 2 or 3 items under operational, physical, and sales and marketing that you can take actions on starting today so that you can, by the end of this year, have a sales gain for 2010 instead of a loss for 2010. A lot of this and more, of course, I like to cover and is in that new book, The Hat Lady Speaks. So in parting, I would like to leave you with this. To accomplish the great things that we must do, we must not only act but dream, not only plan but believe. And they can conquer who believe that they can do it. So I think storage managers are the most dynamic people in our industry and deserve great respect and work very hard. So this is a case of let's show them what we're all about. And I look for feedback and questions. I'll be glad to get to those in the days and weeks ahead as you send them to me based on today's presentation. I want to thank each and every one of you very much. And you can find copies of the book at ministoragemessenger.com/products. Thank you all. Thank you, Poppy and Robin, for helping.
Thank you, Ann, for another exceptional and wonderful webinar. As Ann said, we'd like to thank everyone for attending. And I do want to make one note. Throughout the presentation today, Ann has made a lot of references to the Self-Storage Almanac. We are currently in the process of taking the 2011 Self-Storage Almanac survey. And if you'd like to participate in that, you can either visit our website at ministoragemessenger.com, click on the button to the right that says 2011 Self-Storage Almanac Survey, or you can visit www.almanacsurvey.com. If you do take part in the survey, you will be entered into a drawing for a $500 American Express gift card, and you will be eligible to pre-order the Almanac at a very discounted rate of $25. In addition, let me say that you will receive an email within the next few days giving you a link to this archived presentation. So be sure that you watch your inbox for this. And you'll also receive a very special offer on Ann's book, The Hat Lady Speaks. Thank you again for attending, and have a wonderful rest of the day.